Something had to go over like.
Well, those were kind comments, Director Mueller, and I would echo them. You know, my admiration for you as a professional is exceedingly high, and that you came to the office with the kind of skills, experiences that others have noted that gave you an opportunity to be very, very effective in this important position. So I really salute you for that. Your integrity is undoubted, and your experience and love of your country is undoubted. So I want to join in my comments in that regard. There are so many things that are happening now, and I think the FBI needs to rise to the occasion. The FBI is such a premier investigative agency. I had the honor to prosecute cases brought to me by FBI agents for almost 15 years. And I met with them personally for hours and weekends and nights, and know how meticulously they work to do everything exactly right. And when I hear people have doubts, great doubts sometimes, about the integrity of the average cases and agents that I know that's just not right. They try to do the right thing every day. If they are involved in anything seriously wrong, discipline will fall swift and on them. They can make mistakes. And Congress sometimes creates circumstances that puts them in difficult positions, and life is tough for agents out there. But fundamentally, day after day, I've worked with FBI agents. They're personal friends of mine, remain so for decades, and I just want to share those thoughts. And maybe you'd like to comment about the fidelity of your agents.
You're not going to find a better group of people to serve with. The testimony was most firmly felt when I was a new person in the institution in the wake of September 11th, and the organization, to every agent, every analyst, every professional support staff worked flawlessly in response to that. And it was just indicative of the capabilities of the organization and the quality of the people.
Well, I agree. And Director Mueller, one of the big matters before the nation today is the IRS scandal involving the actions that have been taken to target conservatives or Tea Party groups. So happens that I know Becky Garrettson of the Wetumpka Tea Party, who testified before the House committee, and she was a normal housewife, American citizen, who got deeply engaged in trying to make her country better. She loves this country. Her integrity is high. She was trying to do the right thing, and I believe that the IRS did not perform and handle their applications for status and correctly. I believe it's a very serious matter, and I'm concerned about it. You were asked last week, I believe, about this as to whether or not the victims, the potential victims of these abuses have been interviewed, and I believe you said no. I believe on May 14th, Attorney General Holder said the FBI said an investigation had been commenced. Is the FBI the lead agency of the IRS matter?
Yes.
And you've designated agents in charge of that investigation?
Yes, I have.
And you were asked before whether you knew the names of those. Can you tell us the names or how many have been assigned to it?
I can say that over a dozen agents have been assigned locally. I can tell you that it falls within the purview of Valerie Parlave, who is Assistant Director in charge of our Washington office, who's ultimately in charge of this investigation at the field level, but we also have people at headquarters that are monitoring it. I cannot tell you who in the course of the investigation has been interviewed. I will tell you that before we initiated the investigation, if and we did get complaints, those individuals were interviewed before we even initiated an investigation, and they would be the victims to which you mentioned.
Well, the FBI is the right agency, in my opinion, without question. Should not be internal IRS, IG, or others. And you have the independence to do that effectively, and I believe you can do that. But I called Ms. Garrettson this morning. It so happened she was discussing with a lawyer, and they said they have been talking to other so-called potential victims, and none of them have been interviewed. None of them have been contacted about an interview, even an appointment set up with them. I think that's pretty slow. I think the first thing you do, from my experience, is you go out and interview the people and find out what conversations they had, what documents they have, what the basic parameters of the problems are, and get busy on it. Do you think, it seems to me that you're running behind here. What would you say about that?
Well, I am not familiar with the day in, day out details of the investigation. Quite obviously, given what you said, I'll go back and see where that is. But also in these investigations, one of the first things you do, is, as you well know as a prosecutor, is have the records so that when you do the interviews, you have the requisite materials so that you can do an effective interview. Now, I am hypothesizing because I don't know what's happening at the level of who in particular is being interviewed. But I will go back and check on that.
I think you need to get that level. I think it's too slow. And I think you can always have agents, well, we're getting our records together and we're reviewing some regulations. Somebody needs to go out and find out what the problem is. Talk to the people and see what the problem is first.
I tell you, there is a sense of urgency with the investigation.
All right.
It is not languishing.
And I would share with Senator Grassley deep concern that this immigration bill would say for passports, which you should be aware of and they need to be on top of, only those who produce, issue, or distribute 3 or more passports have committed a crime. Under the bill, only those who forge, alter, and possess 3 or more passports will have committed a crime. And only those who use any official material to make 10 or more passports will have committed a crime. So I hope you will look at that. We would like the FBI's advice if this makes it more difficult to produce integrity in the passport processing business. Would you look at that?
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Director Mueller. Thank you for your wonderful service for the last 12 years. Thank you for the work that you've done in Minnesota. And I think the nation was riveted with the work that you did and your agents did with Boston. So thank you for that. And I also noticed there were ATF agents there, so I'm going to start with that. We just had a hearing for the president's nominee for the head of the ATF. Do you think it would be helpful to have a permanent head of the ATF?
I think it's always beneficial for the agency to have a permanent head.
Very good. Do you aware that since the position became confirmable that this Congress has not ever confirmed anyone for the job?
Understand that.
Yes. And one of the ideas put out there, if they're just simply not going to, we're unable to get bipartisan support for a nominee, enough at least to put us over the top so we get a confirmed nominee, is Senator Durbin's idea to actually put the ATF under the FBI if for a number of years it goes without getting a confirmed director. What would you think of that idea?
That's something that would require a great deal of study and before one wanted to embark on some sort of merger.
Understand. I just think we're at the point where we have 2,400 agents who deserve a permanent head, and well, just as your agents have a permanent head, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to get this done this year. But I just wanted to put that out there for your people to think about, because we're sort of left with we hope confirmation ahead, but if that doesn't happen, we have to think of other ways to get this done. So I appreciate that. The other question, there have been several questions on the NSA issue, and I appreciated your comments earlier, I think it was to Chairman Leahy, about supporting declassifying or working to do that, some of the FISA opinions. Is that correct?
Well, I have not been asked about the FISA opinions in particular. What we were talking about was the examples of where either 215 or 702 had been used. My understanding, though, is that the ODNI is looking at declassification possibilities with regard to the FISA court orders. if that's what you are.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes.
And so do you think that could work?
I believe that there was testimony in yesterday's hearing before the House with regard to that ongoing process, and I'd have to defer to the ODNI for an answer on that.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the information that's been put out to show the number of terrorist attacks that have been averted. I think that's important for the public to understand exactly what's going here and get the facts right about the numbers. Can you talk about, and maybe you want to defer this to another time, but the various checks throughout the process for data collection and analysis that people would understand would protect privacy?
Well, certainly if you look at 215, the significant figures is you do have a database. It just has metadata in it. Numbers does not have any information with regard to who has those particular numbers, no content. You have just 22 persons who have access to this. To run the name, not the names, but run the numbers against the database, 20 analysts and 2 supervisors. And last year there were only 300 inquiries, approximately 300 inquiries made into that database. You then have overlapping and the overlay of oversight from the Department of Justice, the IG's office, the FISA court that renews 215 every 90 days, and then finally the oversight from Congress. So each of the 3 branches of government have a role in assuring that privacy interests are protected here. And at the other end, you have the possibility, the strong possibility and the actuality that in some cases this has been instrumental in contributing to the prevention of terrorist attacks.
Thank you very much. Another issue we've talked about before is the problem of synthetic drugs. We've had deaths in Minnesota, as they have had in many other states, huge increase in the number of calls to the poison control line and others. And as you know, we passed some legislation targeting certain of these synthetic drugs, but I believe there's still more work to be done, and I'm working on the so-called analog drug provision, where I think that we could do more with that. But could you update us on the general state of synthetic drug use in the U.S. and how the provisions we passed last year are helpful, and what more you think we could do?
Well, I am somewhat familiar with that. No, it's on the increase. I am not familiar with the last part of your question as to what more we could do. It's really not our bailiwick. It's more DEA, and particularly in the time of budget constraints where we have to prioritize, that unfortunately drops down further on our list.
Right, and
we're sympathetic, supportive, but
right. We've been working with DA on this issue. It's just that I continue to see that hasn't gone away, and it obviously contributes to other crime as well. So I just want to put it on your radar screen. We're working on a bill on metal theft. We've seen a lot of that throughout the country with buildings and issues. And I know you talked about high-tech stalking, so the cybercrime issue, you've said you believe the FBI must change with evolving technology to better address criminal and national security threats. What is the FBI currently doing to keep up with the changes in technology?
Well, internally, let me just say, we understand that we have to have the basic knowledge of technology to conduct investigations in this age, every agent. To the extent that you need to be refreshed on where we are in order to do our job, is getting greater training. Our specialists, we've got more than 1,000 personnel around the country that are specialists in this particular area. But what I think the key for us is the NCI-JTF, National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force. Following the pattern of what we did after September 11th is understanding that we can't do it alone, having a task force concept where you have all of the major players in cyber arena participating so that if there is a substantial intrusion, we immediately have those who would be involved, whether it be DHS, NSA, DOD. They're trying to determine what how to address it is critically important. The other thing that we have done and put a great deal of focus on the last 6-8 months is work with private industry, providing information to private industry based on what we have found so that they can protect their networks. So growing internally, growing the NCI-JTF, and then building our capacity with the private sector have been the 3 areas that we've been focused on.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you again for your service.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Cruz.